Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. Thank you, all my loyal listeners. And as you know, you can catch my podcast on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And please like and share, especially if it's a particular topic that you think can help someone else. Spread the word for me. That would be great. And also, I want to always say a big thank you to KPPQLP in Ventura, California, for all the listeners that we have in that area. On this episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother, we're going to talk about the importance of play and the significance of support from our parents, and the mother who took that giant leap of faith when she pulled her daughter out of school after fourth grade and began unschooling. My guest is a licensed marriage and family counselor, author, and mother of three. She considers herself a deep diver and a dabbler. She attended college as a teenager, and she's here to join us to talk about her mom. Hi, Roya Dedeaux, and welcome to my podcast.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for having me.
I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting conversation because I was not familiar with I'm familiar with the term homeschooling, was not familiar with unschooling, but I'm curious, do you commend your mom for making that bold decision? What was this, like the 70s or 80s?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I think my mom gave me to myself forever with that decision. I can't think of any other thing anyone's ever done, really, that shaped who I am more than my mom choosing not to send us back to public school. It was, life and philosophy changing, absolutely.
What's your mom's name, or how do you refer to her, your mom, your mother?
My mom is, her name is Tam, and I guess I call her Mom and Mama.
And you're the oldest of three children, I believe.
Yes, yep.
So were you the guinea pig, kind of? She was working out the kinks, or you're all thrown into this as one big bundle?
Well, I guess it was kind of all of us all at once. I was, like you said, I was finishing fourth grade, and I have my next youngest sister is 3 years younger than me, and then my youngest is 3 years younger than her, so 3 and then 6 years younger than me. And so when she decided not to send me back to fifth grade, she decided then at the same time not to send the younger one back. It would have been second grade, I believe. And then my youngest sister was in preschool and just never went to elementary school. And so in some ways I was, I just had more schooling experience, but it was a combination of our school experience, mine, and I loved school. I should mention that. I actually really loved elementary school. But she had started to see just some of our natural curiosity getting squashed, and we started to have some experiences with some of our classmates where she was very involved parent. She was in our classrooms all the time. And my younger sister, I should just tell you names. Roxana is the one younger than me, and Rosie is the youngest. And Roxana was a very early avid reader, and she was starting to get made fun of because she wanted to read, and she was reading well ahead of the other kids. And I was getting a little bit of that same thing in my classrooms, and my mom was just starting to feel like she could do something different and do a little bit better. And so she actually, I think, discovered some of these educational philosophies with the help from one of my sister's teachers, I believe, they were seeing kind of the same things happen in the classroom.
Right. So right out of the gate, supporting your kid and what their strengths and weaknesses are, and not trying to just fit them into the round peg into the square hole.
Yeah, exactly.
That
we
takes
had a really,
lot.
Yeah. I feel like now, especially during COVID, so many people have an understanding even that homeschooling exists, right? But back then, I only knew one other homeschooling family before we started homeschooling. They were homeschooling for very religious reasons. We were not. I thought my mom had just lost her mind. I didn't. She told us we weren't going back, and I was furious. I was about to be a fifth grader. I was going to get a Wacker the next year. I mean, I was just, and I'm a very social person. I had, friends and stuff that I had plans. And she was like, so we're not going back. And I was like, well, all right, well, then you get the silent treatment. And so in my mind, I remember not talking to her for weeks. I think she told me it was something like a day and a half, really. But
oh, my gosh.
And then she finally bribed me with conversation and school supplies, and said, here's some new pens and notebooks. Will you come talk to me? And then she said, basically, I just think we can do better at home. Will you trust me for 3 months? And at the end of those 3 months, you get to decide. You can go back or not, but you just trust me for a little while. And I'll tell you the story of our first week homeschooling, but basically after that, I never looked back. And she was absolutely right. It was the best thing for all of us.
So before we get into the fun activities that you guys did, because I read a little bit about them, what's a little bit of your mom's background? Like, how come she was open to something alternative like this? And what was her childhood about, or her education?
My mom, I'm going to say this out loud with the knowledge that she's probably going to find and listen to this podcast, but I find her so interesting. Because on the surface, I don't think that she seems necessarily like a person who would take big risks or do the thing that's different. But when I look at all of her life decisions, she's always been very willing to kind of stand out or to be the other person in a crowd. And so she was raised not that far from where we live now and where I grew up in Southern California. Her parents were divorced when she was an older teenager, which at the time then, too, was kind of an unusual thing. Her mom was an early childhood educator, and she was also the oldest of 3 daughters. My mom was. And all of them were teachers in some capacity. And so I grew up in a family on my mom's side where we talked education at every family gathering. Everybody was a teacher. Everybody worked for schools. Everybody did something in education. And and my mom tells stories of her mom through that process always kind of gathering people from different countries, different stories, that there was always somebody she kind of adopted who was at, Christmas or at the family party or whatever. And then my mom, she left home when she was pretty young, teenager, and we always joke about how many jobs she's had. She's had a lot of different work experience, and she's just really, really smart, incredibly intelligent. She went into the field of economics, and I believe she did it because at some point someone told her that women don't do that, so she just decided to. And,
wow, I like her so much already.
She's wonderful, and she went to she ended up at USC and met my dad, who's an immigrant from Iran. My dad came to the United States to go to school and never went back, and she was sitting in an economics room, and everybody failed the first test except one guy sitting in the front, so she decided to study with him. And long story short, that's my dad. And so my dad, was a first-generation Persian immigrant. He was raised Baha'i. And weirdly, my mom's grandparents worked for the UN, and they traveled a lot, so they actually were stationed in Iran and Turkey and the Middle East for a while. So she had actually traveled to the Middle East with them a little bit. And so anyways, we have some Persian artifacts in my house growing up that were actually from my mom's side of the family, not my dad's, which was kind of funny. If he came here with nothing. And so I think there's just always kind of been a celebration of doing things differently and doing things that work for you and not paying attention to what everyone else around you is doing. And so when school stopped working for us, she looked at what else there was. And she's just always had a very open mind about possibilities.
Wow. And it just from a little bit that I know of you, you kind of are 2 peas in the pod because you wanted to travel at a very young age too, didn't you, on your own?
I did. I am sure I caused my parents. To the point, and so this is a great example, though, of how my parents, my mom especially in this case, because I wanted to travel, and I had no sense, really. Like, I think about the ages I was, what I wanted to do, what I thought was reasonable. And now that I have kids, of course I'm not going to send my child across the country to go stay with some guy she's talked to online, when she's 14. And so, given that I wanted to do that, they were really, really wonderful about helping, we traveled a lot as a family because my mom knew I wanted to travel by myself. And so we traveled a ton. My mom took us, I remember, one really memorable, I think, a month-long road trip up through Northern California. We did all the gold rush things. We camped all over the place. We traveled to conferences, campouts, and just all sorts of things so that I could get the experience traveling while she was there to teach and help me and then watch how I handled situations and give me more and more responsibility so that at the point where I was ready to go off and travel more on my own, I had all of that experience with her doing that. And, the amount of time and effort she put into doing that because she was looking forward to that point where I would just do it anyway is pretty remarkable. She spent a lot of her life really facilitating her kids.
You learn by doing as opposed to being ordered to or demanded to be seated in a chair or your desk all day long. You're actually becoming a part of it. So it's osmosis in a way to me that it happens naturally and you're absorbing all of this information visually and textually and every which way. I guess that doesn't work for every child either, but I think it certainly takes the learn that lesson out of your experiences. And one more thought. It takes so much more of a parent's time to do this and commit to this. So I commend her again for doing this because it's a lot easier. A lot of moms, myself, we work. So my gosh, those few hours, whether it's preschool or any elementary or high school, your kids are gone. So that's your one time to clean the house, do the food shopping, do your work, do the laundry, do everything. And she was with you guys supporting your interests.
Oh, and I think it would be such an incredible amount of work with one kid, right? But she had three of us with very different temperaments and different interests, and some of it overlapped. And that was the good thing about homeschooling is that we could go to a park day and have friends of all ages for all of us, or the camp house with groups that we would go to. But it takes. I think this is for people who have heard of unschooling. They sometimes confuse it with just letting kids kind of run free and do their own thing. But that's really not an accurate picture at all. Unschooling involves so much parent involvement and sometimes involvement to watch and know when to take a step back and when not to interfere and when to not interrupt a kid who's doing their thing. But it really requires a lot of a parent. And I have to say, now that I've got my own kids, and I always assumed I would grow up and unschool them, I've got businesses to run as well. And I am
it's
over
hard.
and over again impressed. Yeah.
It's really, really hard. Oh, my gosh.
She worked at the same time. She was a teacher. She taught economics and statistics at the college level my whole childhood.
Oh, that's so neat. So she met your dad in the economics class, right, in college?
Yep.
Oh, well, that's so great. And was this a decision that she made with your father? They worked things out together as to the direction about education, or she just said, this is what I want to do?
I think a little column A, a little column B. I think that my dad worked, he worked for Edison, works still now for Edison, solid, secure, 9-to-5 kind of a job. And my mom taught and was home with us and then would go teach night classes. And so she was around. She was the one who was in our classrooms, that kind of thing. And so I think that there was some element of when she said, hey, this thing isn't really working for them, my dad trusted her, that she was the one who was there watching these interactions play out in the classroom. And so he trusted her in those decisions to start. But was always a little bit on the fence about it until he started coaching our soccer teams. And when he started coaching, he had interaction with kids who were going to school and could hear them talk about studying to take the tests and how they don't remember anything, and how just all the he just got some firsthand experience as a way to kind of compare our experiences with ones. And I think that was a really big changing point for him, where it wasn't just he was supporting my mom in her decision, but he was fully on board. And since then, he's also gone to homeschooling conferences and camped out and things like that, and became 100% on board. And especially as we grew up and started having, relationships and jobs and things of our own, I think the fear that parents have, right, is that doing something unconventional is going to harm their kids or impair their kids in some way later down the line. And once that was very clearly not the case, he was able to let go of, I think, any remaining fear that he had.
Was he proud of your mom for tackling this objective?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he always jokes that he ended up not with a doctor or a lawyer or I can't remember the third one that we were supposed to be, but it was all in jest. He ended up with a therapist, and my sisters we all have I don't know how many degrees we have between us because I can't keep track of my middle sister's academic career, but we've all ended up with higher education, jobs, lives that we have had a lot of say in how we shaped them. I went into my career very much with the idea that I wanted to have kids and I also wanted to homeschool. And so how could I do both of those things? And again, in large part because of my mom.
Well, that's pretty great. Now, you started college at a really young age.
I did, yes. I was 13.
What?
And I wanted voice lessons. It sounds silly, but I wanted voice lessons. And my mom, like I said, was a teacher. She taught at a couple different places, but one of the places she taught for years was our community college near us. And so some of my earliest memories were on college campuses. I even remember sitting in her class every once in a while, or just going with her to pick up the test copies at the office or what have you. And so I was really comfortable in college campuses. And when I wanted voice lessons, my mom was like, oh, well, there's a whole music department, and we could go try that out. And so I started the first semester, I think, with just a couple of classes. And I took voice, I took piano. That might have been it my first semester. I was like, oh, yes, no, this is great. Someone who cares about this stuff as much as I do, yes, please. And so then the next semester I took a full load of English classes, and I took a psych class, and I don't know what else. It's been a minute since I was 13, but I took more academic-y classes, but still just the ones that I was interested in. I tried to take them on the days that my mom taught, so that I had a ride home. And I also tried to, only do all day Tuesdays and Thursdays so that I had still plenty of time on other days for things. But by my second or third semester, I was involved with the ceramics department, and that turned into my life. And so then I basically just lived at school because I was there every day, all the time, and I loved it.
That's a wonderful opportunity for you to break yourself into the system so it's not so overwhelming when all these kids have to go away to college. They've never been on a campus before. They don't know how the system works. That opened doors for you to set you at ease. Obviously, you were you had confidence and your intellect was intact and all that, but it just became the norm for you. So it wasn't as overwhelming. But there was a disparity in age became an issue for you, unfortunately.
A little bit. I think because I was so invested in, for example, ceramics class, and I love the people. But then, my friends I was 13, 14, 15, and my friends are in their 20s. And so some of my friends, I also had friends from other things I was doing. I was also in a theater group and on swim teams and Girl Scouts and other things. So there was an issue sometimes with age. But I think that one of the things that my mom really helped with was that and because I was taking these classes, because I was interested in the subject, I wanted to be there. And so I was able to form also really interesting and good relationships with the instructors because they had a student in their class who like genuinely intrinsically wanted to be there, not because I had to knock that class off to transfer or, their parents wouldn't let them stay at home without taking some class or, whatever the case that other students sometimes have to be there for. And so I also had the luxury of, like, if I had a class with a teacher I didn't love, I wouldn't take it. I would drop it because I was doing it because I wanted to, which makes such a big difference. And so any class I've taken, I've also had to take some classes I didn't love. Once I decided that my goal was to transfer and get a degree, I had to, round out some of the things because they don't let you transfer on 10 years of just ceramics classes, unfortunately. But I think that I was able to really use the college system as a resource and the mentorships I found as resources. And I had such a different experience with that because my mom, again, helped me treat that experience how she set us up with all of the rest of our life, which is do the thing, follow the thing that you're interested in, and that has value. And we're given the time to be able to really dig out that value from it. And so even when there were age disparities, that was a bummer for me, but it wasn't the end of the world. And I only really had maybe one or two negative experiences really being the younger person in the class.
Well, unfortunate, but leaps and bounds, you're way ahead of the curve. And I don't think I'm the only adult to say this, but boy, I wish I could go do college all over again, kind of, sort of, maybe. I don't know if I could handle all the work, but, there's so much that I wasn't paying attention to because I was busy doing other things.
Yeah, well, and I get that experience with my clients and students now. And I also fast forward and teach college as well at Cal State Long Beach. But I get that experience all the time now, right, with students who have had some element of their life, most elements of their life being spoken for all the time. If you just think about the sheer amount of time that you're in school, all the hours every day, and then how many years, and someone else is telling you, hey, you're supposed to learn about this is important, and you have to go here because that's what we want you to do, that we get out of the habit sometimes of wanting for ourselves or trusting our own wants, and that's the bulk of the people in my therapy practice that I see, or my students who struggle, that they're trying to figure out kind of again all over for themselves, what is it that I want, or is what I want important or valuable? And I think that when I say, like, my mom gave us to ourselves forever by the decision to take us out of school, that's kind of what I mean, that she showed us with one action how important and valuable what it is that we want.
Right, versus I have to get a job because I need to get a job that's going to pay me a lot of money. So what am I going to pick, A, B, C, or D? And that doesn't bring you happiness all the time.
Yeah, and just that it might, right now it's ceramics, right? And that thing is really important to me, and so I'm going to dedicate a kind of exorbitant amount of time in my life to learning that. But that is important. That just the fact that I'm interested in it and it will lead me to things and connect me to things is important. And that the knowledge of those skills generalize too. That, like, just because you learn, for example, hand-eye coordination, or you improve your hand-eye coordination in a video game, it's not like you lose that hand-eye coordination the rest of your life. But that sometimes it doesn't even matter where we learn a thing, but it will translate to other areas. Because that's a lot of, like, the parents I work with now, too, they get very panicky when their kids want to spend a lot of time in one area, a lot of time on a video game, or even if it's ceramics or, something, that they're worried about their kids spending all that time doing that one thing. But
boy, my hand is up because my one son, and that's all he did is play video games, and then he wound up getting a scholarship for college. So,
yes! Oh, there's so many.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
Well, was I wrong? The way I handled it was incorrect, I would say. Or I wish that's something I wish I could do all over. And I just mentioned it to him. I said, yeah, I'm learning a lot. Unfortunately, you had to deal with me, unhappy with those 13 hours a day on the computer. But, oh my gosh, you try your best, right?
And I think part of the thing is that, like, if you had a friend who was diving into an interest and they were spending, 12, 13 hours a day doing something, we'd use words like dedicated and invested and serious about something. And we would probably admire their dedication to that craft. When our kids do it, we get freaked out and scared and use words like addicted and obsessed and other negative things. And I think what my mom did was just recognize that it's not different for kids, and respected those things about us, and that we wanted to spend time doing those things. If it was an adult, we would, like, those are resume building words, right? Dedicated to and invested in and engaged with. And it's not different. Like, humans learn how we learn, and we learn when we're interested in things. So I'm glad to hear that that you had such a good outcome.
Isn't that
That's
funny?
wonderful.
He showed me. No, he's such a sweetheart. Oh my gosh. And we laugh about it all the time because, and we talk about, like, when he has kids, if he eventually has children of his own, what it's going to be like for him, trying to figure out the best needs and wants of his child, and how to deal with that as a parent. Between your mom being a teacher and following this dream for her children's happiness is really just remarkable. And especially when, she was the minority. She had her family support because everybody was an educator. But it's so much easier when you're able to put your passion and your drive into what you love.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm impressed all the time, especially considering how, that she really was a pioneer in this way where we live. And I do remember pulling up to our very first homeschool park day and my jaw dropping because there were like 30 cars in the parking lot of the park. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's other people as crazy as my mother. What is this? Me at the ripe old wise age of 9 or 10. But yeah, she's really
remarkable.
Dramatically changed her life. Yeah.
And she interacts with your children as well, right? Your parents play a big part in your children's lives today.
Yep.
You're very lucky. So I want to mention your book before we go. Roya Dedeaux, love your last name. Roya has written a book called Connect with Courage, Practical Ways to Work Through Fear and Find Joy in the Places Your Kids Take You. I wish you the best of luck with your book and with your practice and with your children. And thank you for sharing the story about your mom. Please say hi to Pam for us, from all of us from Should Have Listened to My Mother.
I will. She'll be thrilled. And I know she says hi, too. She's the world's friendliest person and could talk to you for hours and hours.
I know. It's so much fun. But that's the best part about doing this show. I get to meet all these wonderful people and hear about their moms. So, and the lasting impression they've made on all of us. So thank you for sharing your story.
Of course, as a therapist, I have heard my fair share of mother stories, too, and I always enjoy talking about things that make us who we are and the people who make us who we are. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Jackie. I really appreciated it. And if anybody, the book is there, Connect with Courage, specifically to help parents support their kids and their interests for better mental health and relationships for everybody.
Thank you, Roya. And we will be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother. Thank you.